Today you will hear the story of a simple farmer who refused to let nature control his life. Instead of hiding from storms like everyone else, he learned how to use them. Yes, he trained the wind. And along the way, he discovered a lesson that all of us forget when life throws trouble at us. By the end of this story, you will understand exactly how to turn your worst problems into your strongest advantages. There was once a man named Larry. He lived in a wide open valley where the wind behaved like an angry relative who visited whenever it felt like it. The weather could change in seconds. One moment the sky was a calm blue, and the next, gray clouds rolled in like walls moving across the land. Larry owned a farm that had seen better days. He grew corn, beans, and a small patch of vegetables that barely survived each season. Every year storms arrived at the worst possible moment. They knocked over fences, ripped off roofs, flattened crops, and filled the fields with mud. It did not matter how hard Larry worked. The storm always found a way to undo something. People in the valley used the same sentence every time disaster struck. The wind wins again. That sentence followed Larry everywhere. He heard it in the market. He heard it in the town bar. He even heard it at home when he tried to sleep. Larry did not hate the storm, but the storm made him feel small. It made him feel powerless. And there is nothing heavier on the human heart than the feeling that your effort does not matter. But here is the strange part. Larry never gave up. He did not know how to quit. Even on the worst days, he came home soaked, breathing hard, covered in mud, and he still said out loud, "There must be a way." That one sentence changed everything. One afternoon, weeks after a violent storm destroyed half his crops, Larry was walking near the cliffs at the edge of his land. These cliffs looked over the valley like old giants watching from above. As he walked, he noticed the wind rushing through a narrow gap between two giant rocks. It hit the opening and whistled through like a wild animal, but something else caught his attention. Right after the wind passed through the gap, it blew straight upward. Larry stared at it like he had discovered treasure. He thought, the wind is not against me, I am just standing in the wrong place. That idea lit up his mind, it shook him. It excited him, it scared him. But ideas that change your life usually do all three. He went back home and wrote on a piece of paper. The wind can lift, the wind can push, the wind can carry, the wind can work. He stared at the sentence for hours. Most people complain about problems until the problems bury them. Larry did something different. He asked a question that few people ask. How can this problem help me? At first, Larry tried small experiments. He planted tall grass in certain areas to see how the wind curved around them. He tied colored ribbons to poles and watched the wind twist and stretch them. He built tiny wooden fans and placed them all around his farm to track which direction the wind moved during different hours of the day. People thought he had lost his mind. Children laughed at him. Old neighbors shook their heads and said he had finally cracked, but Larry did not care. He was learning the language of the wind. One night he stayed awake until sunrise, writing in his notebook, drawing maps, and sketching strange devices. By the end of the week he had one goal. Use the storm or lose to the storm. If modern scientists had visited his farm, they would have told him that the force of the wind carried more potential energy than most people understood. But Larry did not need a scientific paper. He learned everything by watching, failing, fixing, and trying again. Larry built the first wind wall using pieces of scrap metal and old wood. It stood at the far end of the farm, right where storms usually entered his land. To outsiders, the wall looked ridiculous. It leaned at strange angles and had holes cut out of it in random places. But nothing on that wall was random. Larry had learned something important about storms. Storm winds do not hit every part of the land with equal strength. They follow invisible lines, just like rivers. His wall simply guided that river away from the crops and toward a large, empty field. The next storm arrived 3 weeks later. People in the valley waited for the usual destruction. But at Larry's farm, something incredible happened. The wind hit the wall, split into two, and rushed around the crops instead of through them. For the first time in years, Larry lost nothing to the storm. He ran outside after the clouds cleared and laughed so loudly that even his cows stared at him like he had gone mad. But he was not mad. He was free. But the valley hated change. Instead of celebrating Larry, people began whispering. They said his wall was dangerous. They said he was tempting fate. They said he was fighting nature and that it would end badly. A group of farmers walked to his house one morning and told him to remove the wall. "Storms are storms," one of them said. "A man should not challenge the sky." Larry knew they were scared. People fear what they do not understand, and they fear anything that reminds them that maybe they gave up too soon. Larry stood in silence and listened to all of them speak, but he refused to remove the wall. He believed that fear was the real enemy, not the storm. Still, this created a new challenge. The next storms would be even stronger because the season was changing. Larry needed something more than a wall. He needed a system. Larry spent the next month creating more structures. He built tall wooden towers with spinning arms. He added channels that funneled wind toward water wheels. He created nets that caught falling branches before they could damage the plants. He even made a device that used wind pressure to pump water into storage barrels. Nothing he built was perfect, but everything he built helped. Slowly, the farm transformed. It no longer looked like a simple piece of land. It looked like a place designed by someone who understood storms better than anyone else. Something else changed too. Larry himself. He stopped fearing loud thunder. He stopped panicking when clouds turned dark. He even looked forward to storms because they helped him test his ideas. His neighbors watched this transformation and felt something strange inside themselves. It was not jealousy. It was something older and deeper. It was the painful feeling that maybe they had accepted a life that did not need to be so difficult. Then came the biggest storm the valley had seen in 27 years. The wind roared like 1,000 beasts. The sky looked like it was falling apart. Trees twisted, houses shook, and everyone locked themselves inside, praying the storm would pass quickly. But Larry walked outside. Not because he was fearless. Fear lived inside him like it lives inside all people, but he had learned something powerful. Fear loses its strength when you face it with understanding. As the storm approached, Larry stood at the edge of his field and watched the wind hit the first wall. The wind split just like before. The towers caught the pressure and spun wildly. The water pumps jumped to life. The nets caught debris. The channels pushed the strongest gusts toward the empty land. For the first time in the valley's history, a storm that powerful did not destroy a single crop on Larry's farm. When the clouds finally broke apart, the valley was scattered with broken fences, fallen trees, collapsed sheds, and flooded fields. But in the middle of all that destruction, Larry's farm stood untouched. The farmer who trained the wind had won. His neighbors walked out of their homes and stared at his land in disbelief. And for the first time, nobody asked him to tear anything down. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. Instead, they walked to him one by one and asked, "Can you teach us?" Larry taught them everything he knew. Not because he wanted praise or attention, but because he believed that knowledge grows when you share it. Soon the valley transformed. Farms were rebuilt using wind walls and towers. Water pumps filled barrels before storms even ended. People stopped fearing the sky. They respected the storm, but they did not hide from it anymore. Larry learned the greatest lesson of his life. You cannot control adversity, but you can shape how it touches you. A storm is not good or bad. A problem is not good or bad. Life itself is not good or bad. It is your response that decides everything. Pain can push you down or lift you up. Problems can break you or strengthen you. Adversity can destroy you or prepare you. The difference lies in one question. Are you running from the storm, or are you learning from it? This story is not really about Larry. It is about you. Think of the problem that keeps knocking you down. Maybe it is money. Maybe it is self-doubt. Maybe it is fear of failing. Maybe it is a mistake you never forgave yourself for. Maybe it is a dream that feels too far away. Whatever your storm is, ask yourself, how can this help me? Where is the opportunity inside this difficulty? What is this trying to teach me? The moment you stop fighting the storm and start learning from it, you stop losing and you start growing. And sometimes, growth is exactly what the wind is trying to give you. The farmer who trained the wind did not do anything magical. He did not bend the laws of nature. He simply changed his relationship with the storm. Instead of fear, he used understanding. Instead of resistance, he used strategy. Instead of complaining, he experimented until the wind became his partner instead of his enemy. Your life is full of the same storms and the same choice. Run from them or use them. Fear them or learn from them. Let them break you or let them build you. Every storm has power. It is up to you whether that power works for you or against you.